Hi all, this is Allmighty and welcome to this video. Once again I'm going to show you a Fischer's game, and this is actually the last game I'm going to show you from the Plata tournament of 1959. There is no special reason. We've emptied up the list of memorable games that Fischer had from this tournament. This isn't the one from the list. It was actually, when I was going through the games, it was pretty interesting to me, so I decided this is the one I'm going to show, and later on we will move to the Santiago tournament of 1959. As we said in some of the previous videos, after leaving school, Fischer went on a South America trip, playing some tournaments there. And okay, in this game he is playing against a very strong Yugoslavian chess grandmaster Borislav Ivkov. Let's see what actually happened in the game. Ivkov is white and he plays d4, which essentially means that Fischer will play the King's Indian, and of course we see knight to f6. After c4 g6, knight c3, bishop to g7, and e4 and sorry, bishop to g7. Oh, okay. e4 and d6, we see the King's Indian, and Ivkov goes for the Saemisch variation with f3. Fischer immediately plays e5 and now d5, blocking the center, so looking for more of a positional play. But Fischer goes for the main line, knight to h5. The main reason, don't want to allow pinning of the knight with bishop to g5, and also this knight on h5 will prove useful because king will go kingside castle and f5 will be pushed. g4 cannot be expected from white because queen to h4 is a big threat there with a check. So bishop to e3, continuing with the development, f5 immediately, knight from g to e2, going kingside castle, and queen to d2. So white isn't interested, of course, after playing f3 going kingside castle, he will go queenside castle. And Fischer has already played f5 and kind of opened up his king. But this is all normal for the King's India. We see a6 now, queenside castle, and b5 immediately. So Fischer is attacking on both sides of the board. But it will be Ivkov will prove that sometimes black needs to play very cautiously in this variation, because essentially playing f5 and having this setup of bishop and his pawns preparing to push g4 and h4 could be quite dangerous for black. And now we see pawn captures on f5, and the only thing that you can do is capture with the pawn. Capturing with the bishop or with the rook is met with g4, and then you just lose the piece. Pawn captures on f5, and now all of a sudden the g file is open. So this is one thing that black should take care of. Knight to g3, so no time to push f4 because knight can capture on h5, and later on he will be attacking on g7. So knight to f6 needs to be played. Bishop to g5, now pinning this knight. So that idea that that was already there when Fischer played to h5, now it finally can be done. And here in this position, of course, queen to e8, because also knight to h5 is a threat because the knight is pinned. We see h4 and b4. So continuing with the attack on the other side. And now knight to b1. Of course, you have to move the knight. And now the queen is also very ideally placed here because she can come to a4 at any point. But Fischer decides to play knight to h5 at this point. And probably not, I wouldn't say the best of moves, probably a5 was better here. But I guess he wasn't expecting white to actually capture here. First, of course, you have to capture on h5. Queen captures on h5, and now Ivkov played bishop to e2, but probably he could have even gone to queen to b4. But to play that, you really have to be confident in your King's Indian play with white pieces. Now after knight to d7 you can even go queen to a5, and after rook to b8 capture even on c7, threatening capture on d6. Black would play e4, and this is a very dangerous game that both of the sides are playing. So it's very difficult to play, and this is probably why Ivkov didn't go for it. He played normally bishop to e2, and this is essentially fine. And now Fischer decided to play f4. He thought that, okay, with f4 he is locking in the position, but a simple g4 just breaks it all out, because essentially you don't want to capture en passant here. You would definitely open up the files, and after rook comes on the g file, this would be deadly for black. So you will need to move the queen. Queen to f7, and now bishop to d3, attacking on this diagonal. h6, one other last attempt, I would say, from Fischer to try and do something, but simply Ivkov played queen to c2, and all of a sudden a very great attack is happening on the king's side. If this pawn captures, then this is all over for black, because bishop to h7, king to h8, bishop to g6, queen has to move somewhere, for example to e7, and this is with check. King goes to g8, but after this you can give once again on h7 check, move the bishop, and this would be deadly, definitely deadly for black. So this is something that you don't want to play. Yeah, h6 is considered by Ivkov not a threat, so he just plays queen to c2. And Fischer notices that, and he plays b3. So you need to do something on the other side, because otherwise you'll be just losing, because Ivkov continues to attack. Pawn captures on b3 and a5 now. And now actually Ivkov had bishop to g6, and he could have ended the game pretty soon, because now the only move is queen to d7, the only square for the queen, and now bishop to h6. If bishop captures, you have g5, bishop has to go to g7, and now h5. These two pawns will pose an enormous threat to black's king, so now h6 is a threat, bishop will move, then g6, rook will come on g1, and those pawns are unstoppable. So you have given up a piece, but for a great attack. If you play something like a4, h6 can be played, bishop to h8, and after that rook from d to g1. Ivkov can just ignore this threat of this pawn and continue with the attack, and this will be over soon for Fischer. But Ivkov didn't go for this. He had a different plan. After a5 he played queen to e2, probably going for this queen to e4 idea. But now Fischer captures on g5. Pawn captures, and now rook to d8, so that the king can have an escape route. g6, and one other move that was really strange to me made by Ivkov, because essentially now you're blocking in your bishop on this diagonal, which should be used for the attack. And Fischer just moves the queen to e7, knight to c3, and now knight to a6. Knight to e4, so that was the whole point of the knight going, and now knight to c5. Knight captures, pawn captures, and all of a sudden white, he is better, but with diminished chances to actually win the game. Rook finally goes on h5, so that you can double up the rooks, but now a4 is played, and all of a sudden you can capture on b3, and the a file will be open, so you have to capture on a4. Rook captures on a4, and now king to b1, so playing king to b1 to stop rook to a1. But a simple bishop to d7 figures out that the other rook can come, and still the threat is there. Here Ivkov played once again a really strange move, because essentially, okay, he played d6 with a clear idea. He wants to play bishop to e4 and bishop to d5. But Fischer simply captures, bishop to e4 and bishop to e6, stops all the threats. And now also the queen can come on the a file. And all of a sudden the Fischer is the one who is continuing with the attack. So queen to d3 is played. And now just wanted to go over, if bishop to c4, this isn't good, because then Fischer would lose the game. Bishop to d5 comes, you have to capture, queen captures, and after king to f8, rook to f5, check, king to e8, rook to f7, and this is just losing for black. So this was a possibility, but a very bad one. You could capture with the rook on c4, but actually here Fischer played queen to a7, continuing with the attack. And this is also good. Rook from d to h1. Yeah, okay, that was an okay move, but still here Fischer had a deadly move which would essentially seal the game. He could have played instead of that bishop to d5, but essentially all leads to the same result. So after rook from d to h1, rook to b8 was the move that needed to be played. Now you also have, after rook to a1, you have you can sacrifice the rook on b2, and when the king captures, queen will come to a2, and checkmate will follow soon. But for some reason Fischer didn't go for this. He actually played rook to a1 immediately, and we see king to c2, queen to a4, and now queen to b3. Otherwise, if he plays b3, then this will follow, so this will be checkmate. It won't be checkmate soon, but it will be a big threat after something like this, and rook to a2 all of a sudden, yeah, it doesn't look too good for white. So queen to b3, queen captures on b3, king captures on b3, and now rook to b8 check. King has to go to c3 to defend this pawn as well, and now rook to a2. So double attack on this pawn, rook comes on b1, and now rook to b4. So attacking this pawn now. b3, and now rook to a3 was played. But actually in this position, once again, Fischer had a move that seals the deal, and that was d5. And the main idea behind this move is to open up this bishop. So so the best move is to capture with the pawn, and now you capture on g4. Because if you capture here, then this comes with check, and this is bad for white. You capture here, and if pawn captures, of course, rook captures on e4, rook will move, and e4 will be a big threat. But if you don't capture, if you play something like rook to h7, which is the next best move, bishop captures here, pawn captures, and after e4 you have to sacrifice, so you have to capture here, otherwise the king cannot go anywhere. King captures here, and now you have a rook for a bishop and a very strong pawns here, which are pass pawns as well, and this is once again just winning for Fischer. But he didn't play d5, he played instead of that rook to a3, going once again pressuring this pawn. But king plays on c2, going out of the way, rook to a2, king to c3, and now rook comes on the other side, rook to e2. But essentially this is where Fischer gave up all chances for a win, because now rook to a1 is the move, and as you can see with this pawn here, in the end rook to a8 seems like a big threat. So rook to e3 was played, king to c2, and rook from e captures on b3. Rook to a8 check, rook to b8 covering, and now not capturing of course, but rook to a7. It is very important to keep pressure on the 7th rank. If you do with exchange, then there are no more chances for white. Black will just capture on c4, and in the end, once again, he will win the game. But now the threat is, of course, rook to h7, double attack on the g7 bishop, and after that, pushing off the pawn. And this is exactly what happened in the game. Now Fischer cannot do anything but give checks. Rook to b2 check, king to c1, and rook from 2 to b4, now going for this pawn. But rook to h7. Bishop moves to f6 so that it isn't captured, but now g7 is pushed, and the idea of course is rook to h8 checkmate. If you capture, then you just lose the bishop, and yeah, there is no point in that. So with this checkmate hanging in the air, of course Fischer has to give a check, captures the pawn, and now king to d1. And after this they just repeated moves, and after a couple of moves they just agreed for a draw. In the end, it was a very exciting game with chances on both sides. First Ivkov had that bishop to g6, then after that Fischer had this d5, and also previously also had some couple of moves which could have just sealed the game for him, but he didn't saw them. This is something, yeah, that happens. Yeah, it just happens in chess. I just want to go over one other thing. If, for example, after, okay, this check here, for Ivkov for some reason comes on e1, of course there is this rook captures on e4 with check. And if when pawn captures, you capture the rook. And this is losing for white. So this is why you have to stay on c and d file. And yeah, Fischer has to settle for a draw because essentially he cannot avoid checkmate threats there. And yeah, this is pretty much it for this video. For the end, I've prepared the standings. So as you can see, Fischer has had shared the third place with Ivkov. Naidorf was first, only half a point in front of Fischer with Pachman. Pachman actually won a game against Fischer. And yeah, Fischer had a very nice result, drawing the games against Ivkov, and Naidorf had a very good 8 wins. As a 15-year-old, a very nice result. And yeah, so this is pretty much it from me covering this tournament. If there is, so I went through the games. This was also one of the interesting ones. If you had some special requests for some other game from this tournament, please share it. But I will continue later on with the story with the Santiago tournament, which happened also in 1959. So yeah, let me just move this. That being said, I would like to thank you for watching this video, and I will see you next time.